What are the common causes of multi-car collisions in Florida, and how is the negligence determined? Meaning, how do we figure out who's at fault? So multi-car collisions are a very common occurrence in Florida because what happens a lot of times is somebody either slams on their brakes or hits the car in front of them, and it causes a domino effect. The car behind them rear ends that person, then the car behind them rear ends that person. Now in Florida, you should be, and really anytime you're driving a car, you should be following at such a safe distance that even if somebody slammed on their brakes or rear-ended the car in front of them, that you would have time to stop and avoid the collision. That's not just for, determining liability in a car accident. That's to keep you safe. Always follow with enough distance to be able to stop in case somebody in front of you comes to a sudden stop. So the normal distance that you want to follow is 1 car length for every 10 miles per hour that you're going. So if you're going 70 miles an hour, you should be 7 car lengths behind the car in front of you. And then that way, if they rear-ended somebody in front of you, you would have time to avoid the collision. So after something like this happens, how does an insurance company, how does a jury, how does an attorney, how do you figure out, hey, who's at fault? So generally, the person who's going to be most at fault is the one who started it. Who rear-ended that car first? Now, sometimes we have clients who get rear-ended by a car that got rear-ended, right? So we have a person in the middle, they get rear-ended and they get pushed into the car in front of them. Most of the time, that person in the middle is not going to have a lot of responsibility to pay for your injuries. The person who's going to have that responsibility is the rearmost car that really caused the accident to happen. Now, there are arguments we can make against that middle car, but your strongest case is going to be against that back car. However, sometimes people feel 2 collisions. They get rear-ended, and then the car that rear-ends them gets rear-ended by another car. The insurance companies are going to come in and say, hey, that backmost car isn't at fault. They had to come to a sudden stop because this car negligently rear-ended you. Well, that's not necessarily true, because as we've talked about, they should have been following at such a safe distance that they could have stopped, and they didn't, and they are liable for your injuries. So before you talk to an insurance company, you want to talk to an attorney first, because we can help you understand what happened in the accident by asking the right questions. And if you get on the phone with an insurance company and just nonchalantly say, yeah, it was an accident, I felt an impact, right? They're going to say, well, you didn't mention that you felt 2 impacts, and that could be important later on down the road when we're trying to figure out, hey, who's at fault for this accident? Who bears the responsibility for paying your medical bills, for paying your future medical costs, for paying for your pain and suffering? Those are questions that we need answers to, and the best way to get it is for us to help you investigate that. Following an accident like this, what we call a multi-car pileup on a bridge or a very busy road, there's going to be a lot of finger pointing. So you want to make sure that you document that as much as you can and get statements, get everybody's names and their phone numbers who saw it, witnesses, because when the police show up, they're going to have to talk to all the people in all the cars. They may miss some of the witnesses who saw exactly what happened. So to protect your case, ask people, hey, did you see what happened? Can I get your name and your phone number? Make sure you take a lot of really good pictures of all the cars that were involved and how they ended up after. All this stuff is going to come into play when we're trying to evaluate who is at fault for an accident and who's ultimately responsible for compensating you for your case. So if you've been involved in a multi-car collision in Florida and you're wondering, hey, how do I prove who's at fault? Am I at fault? Is the other person at fault? Call us today. We offer a free confidential case evaluation that's completely risk-free to you. It's covered by the attorney-client privilege. So anything that you say to us is not like talking to an insurance company. We're there to help you. And so if you call us, we'll be able to give you a breakdown of what your legal options are and the best way to proceed.